A homeless mother watches her children sleep on cardboard, shivering with cold on a forgotten city corner. Hunger gnaws at her, shame suffocates her, and she believes God has finally turned his face away. That night seemed to be the end of her story, but just a few meters away, a simple man, almost invisible to the world, receives a silent calling he cannot ignore. He has no wealth, no status, but he has something that changes everything, a heart willing to obey. What happens next transforms the darkest night into an unexpected miracle, a journey of abandonment, faith, redemption, and true love that will make you believe that God is never late. It was one of those nights that wounds the soul. The cold December wind cut through the streets of Detroit like a razor, and Sarah Mitchell, 34, sat on a dark sidewalk, hugging her knees and trying not to collapse. Beside her slept her two children, Emma, 7, and Noah, just 4. They were wrapped in coats too thin for the cold, lying on cardboard boxes she had gotten behind a supermarket. Sarah looked at them and felt her chest tighten. How had she ended up there? 2 years ago, Sarah had a different life. She wasn't rich, but she had a small apartment, a job as a supermarket cashier, and a husband. But her husband, Derek, had a serious drinking problem. At first, he only drank on weekends. Then, it became every day. And when alcohol wasn't enough, drugs came into the picture. Sarah tried everything. She begged, cried, prayed. But Derek didn't change. He lost his job, spent everything they had, and when Sarah said she was going out with the children, he hit her for the first time. It was the last night she spent in that house. Sarah left with her children in the middle of the night, carrying only a backpack with some clothes. You thought you could manage. You sought shelter at your sister's house, but your sister was also going through difficulties and couldn't help. You tried to stay in a shelter, but the spaces were always full. You slept in your car for a while, until the car was towed because you couldn't pay the installments. And suddenly, without understanding how, Sarah was on the street. She kept trying. She picked up odd jobs here and there, cleaning houses, washing dishes in restaurants under the table, but it wasn't enough. It never was. The money barely covered a snack for Noah and Emma, and every night, Sarah felt the weight of guilt crushing her chest. Those children didn't deserve this. They deserved a warm bed, food on the table, a real life, but all Sarah could offer was cardboard and old coats. That night, especially, Sarah was at her breaking point. Emma had cried from hunger before bed, and Sarah had nothing to give her. Noah had asked, "Mommy, are we going to have a house again?" And Sarah didn't know what to answer. She just hugged him and said yes, soon everything would get better. But deep down, she didn't believe it anymore. Sarah had always been a woman of faith. Since she was little, she attended church with her grandmother. She believed in God, she believed in miracles. But lately, it seemed like God had disappeared. She had prayed so much. She had asked for help. She had begged for a chance, for a way out. And nothing. Only silence. Only cold. Only pain. So that night, as she watched her children shivering with cold, Sarah said a different kind of prayer. It wasn't a plea. It was almost a farewell. God, I don't know if you're still there. I tried, you know. I tried so hard. But I don't think I can take it anymore. I'm tired. I'm broken. And these children, they deserve more than I can give. If you don't show up now, I don't know what will happen to us. Sarah wiped away her tears with her coat sleeve and closed her eyes. She felt she had hit rock bottom. She saw no way out. She saw no hope. And for the first time in her life, Sarah thought God had turned his face away from her. But what Sarah didn't know was that, at that very moment, just 2 blocks away, God was already moving. Marcus Turner, 41, was returning home after a double shift as a hospital janitor. Marcus was a simple man, tall, thin, with calloused hands from so much work. He didn't have much. He lived in a tiny apartment in the suburbs, drove an old car that broke down more often than it ran, and every month it was a struggle to pay the bills. But Marcus had something that many people don't have: a huge heart and unwavering faith. He used to say that God spoke to him in a different way. It wasn't an audible voice, it wasn't a vision. It was a tightness in his chest, a discomfort, a little nudge that wouldn't leave him alone until he obeyed. That night, Marcus was driving down the main street when he felt that tightness. Something was telling him to turn at the next street. Marcus frowned. "Sir, I just want to get home. I'm dead tired." But the tightness didn't ease. On the contrary, it grew stronger. Marcus sighed deeply and turned the steering wheel. He entered a poorly lit street, full of abandoned buildings and closed shops. Marcus looked around, confused. What was he doing there? Then, in the dim light of a lamppost, he saw 3 small figures huddled together on the sidewalk, 2 children and a woman. Marcus stepped on the brake slowly and stopped the car. He stared for a moment, his heart heavy. He knew what this was. He knew those people were living on the street, and he knew God had brought him there for a reason. Marcus turned off the car and got out. The cold wind hit his face, but he didn't even feel it. He walked slowly to where Sarah was sitting. She raised her head, frightened. Her eyes were red from crying, and Marcus saw the fear in her face. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Hey, calm down. I don't want to hurt you." Sarah said nothing. She just pressed her children closer to her body. Marcus took a step back and took a deep breath. He knew he needed to be careful. That woman had every reason in the world to be suspicious of a stranger on the street in the middle of the night. "My name is Marcus. I was passing by and, I know this is going to sound strange, but I think God brought me here. To help you." Sarah let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "God? Seriously? Why didn't he appear sooner, then?" Marcus swallowed hard. He knew that pain. He himself had gone through difficult times. He had questioned God, too. "I don't know the answer to that, but I know I'm here now, and I want to help." Sarah looked at him suspiciously. Marcus could see the internal struggle on her face. She wanted to believe him, but she was afraid. "Look," Marcus continued, his voice low and calm. "I don't have much, but I have an apartment. It has a sofa, it has food, and you can't spend the night here in the cold. These children need a warm place to sleep." Sarah shook her head. "I can't accept that from a stranger. I understand. But look at them." Sarah looked at her children. Emma was shivering even in her sleep. Noah's lips were purple from the cold. Marcus crouched down to Sarah's level and looked into her eyes. "I know you're scared. I know you don't trust me. But I swear to God, I just want to help. Just tonight. You sleep on the couch, I'll sleep in the bedroom. In the morning, if you want to leave, you can. No pressure. But at least let these children spend the night in a warm place." Sarah felt the tears welling up again. It had been so long since someone had shown her kindness. So long since someone had cared. She looked at Marcus and, for the first time in months, saw something she had forgotten. Hope. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Marcus smiled, a tired but sincere smile. "Because I believe that we're here to help each other, and because God taught me that when we have the chance to do good, we do it. It's that simple." Sarah took a deep breath. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to be suspicious, to run away. But her heart said otherwise. And on that no-control night, Sarah decided to trust. "Okay," she whispered. "Just tonight." Marcus smiled and helped Sarah to her feet. He carefully picked Noah up, and Sarah carried Emma. The children hadn't even woken up. Marcus took everyone to the car and drove silently to his apartment. When they arrived, Marcus turned on the lights and the heater. The apartment was small but clean and cozy. It had an old sofa, a small TV, and a simple kitchen. But to Sarah, it seemed like a palace. Marcus laid Noah down on the sofa and covered him with a thick blanket. Sarah laid Emma down next to him and covered her as well. The children sighed in relief, finally warm and secure. Marcus went to the kitchen and returned with a plate of food. Nothing too elaborate, rice, beans, chicken. But Sarah ate it as if it were the best meal of her life. Marcus sat on the other side of the room, just watching in silence. When Sarah finished, she looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak. "You have no idea what this means." Marcus shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. I'm happy to be able to help." Sarah wiped away her tears and took a deep breath. "I had just finished praying, telling God that I had given up, that I couldn't take it anymore. And then you appeared." Marcus smiled gently. "God has an interesting way of answering our prayers. Sometimes he uses the most unlikely people." Sarah gave a weak laugh, but there was relief in it. For the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. That night, Sarah slept on the sofa next to her children, covered by warm blankets wound with a full stomach. And for the first time in months, she slept peacefully. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, Sarah woke to the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes. For a moment, she forgot where she was. She opened her eyes and saw Emma and Noah still sleeping beside her, covered and warm. Then she remembered. Marcus, the apartment, the previous night. Sarah sat up slowly, still a little groggy, and saw Marcus in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. He looked at her and smiled. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." Sarah nodded, still processing everything. "Yes, thank you." Marcus placed a plate of pancakes on the small table in the living room. "I made breakfast, nothing too fancy, but it'll do." Emma and Noah woke up to the smell of food. Their eyes lit up when they saw the pancakes. Marcus served them both with a wide smile, and the children ate as if there were no tomorrow. Sarah watched everything with a lump in her throat. It had been so long since she had seen her children so happy. After breakfast, Sarah began gathering her things, ready to leave. She had promised herself she would only stay one night, but Marcus touched her arm gently. "Hey, there's no need to rush. Look, I know you said you were only staying tonight, but why don't you stay a little longer? At least until you can get organized." Sarah shook her head quickly. "No, Marcus, you've already done too much. I can't take advantage of your kindness." Marcus sat in the kitchen chair and looked at her sincerely. "Sarah, look, I live alone. I have space, and, I know what it's like to go through hardship. When my father died, I was 16 years old. My mother was left alone with 4 children. We almost ended up on the streets too. But some people came along and helped us, and I promised that, if I could someday, I would do the same. So let me help you. It's not pity, it's gratitude." Sarah felt the tears welling up again. She wanted to refuse, wanted to keep her pride intact. But when she looked at her children, she saw Emma smiling for the first time in weeks. She saw Noah playing with an old toy car that Marcus had given him, and he realized that sometimes accepting help wasn't weakness, it was courage. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice low, "but only until I get a job, and I'll pay you back, I promise." Marcus smiled. Combined, in the following weeks, Sarah's life began to change. Marcus helped her get a job as a cleaner at a public school. It didn't pay much, but it was a start. Sarah worked hard, saving every penny. Marcus looked after the children when Sarah was at work. He played with Noah, helped Emma with her homework. And little by little, that strange house began to feel like a home. Sarah sensed something different about Marcus. He wasn't like the men she'd known before. He was kind, patient, respectful. He never made any advances, never asked for anything in return. He simply helped because he wanted to, because he believed it was the right thing to do. And Marcus noticed something different about Sarah too. She was strong. I had been through so much, but I hadn't lost my essence. She was a devoted mother, a woman of faith, even when faith seemed impossible. Marcus began to admire her, and, without realizing it, he began to feel something more. 3 months later, on a cold March night, Sarah and Marcus were sitting in the living room after the children had gone to bed. They were talking about everything and nothing, as had become their custom. And then, in the middle of the conversation, Sarah stopped and looked at Marcus seriously. "Marcus, I need to ask you something." "He can talk." "Why do you do this? Seriously, you took in a stranger and 2 children into your home. You help us every day. You've never asked for anything in return. Why? Marcus was silent for a moment, thinking. Then he smiled gently. You know, I believe God puts people in our lives for a reason. When I saw you that night, I knew I had to help. Not because I'm special or because I'm some kind of hero, but because I think that's how God's love works. He uses us to show love to one another, and I'm just doing what I think He called me to do. Sarah felt her heart clench. She looked at Marcus and saw something she hadn't seen in any other man. True kindness, not the kind of kindness that expects something in return, but pure, selfless kindness that comes from the heart. You changed my life, Marcus, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I had given up. I thought God had abandoned me. But you came along, and you showed me that He was still there. Marcus reached out and gently took Sarah's hand. God never abandoned you, Sarah. Sometimes, we just need to go through the darkness to see the light. And you are strong. You survived. And now you're here, rebuilding your life. That's a victory. Sarah squeezed his hand and smiled through her tears. That night, something changed between them. It wasn't something explicit. It wasn't something they spoke about. But it was something they both felt. A connection. A mutual understanding. The beginning of something deeper. Months passed. Sarah got a better job as a secretary at a medical clinic. Marcus was promoted at the hospital. Emma and Noah started attending school regularly and were doing well. Life was finally on track. And Sarah and Marcus, they were in love. It wasn't one of those movie romances, full of drama and grand declarations. It was something quiet, solid, built on trust and respect. They talked late into the night. They laughed together. They prayed together. And little by little, they realized they couldn't imagine life without each other. One Sunday afternoon, after church, Marcus took Sarah and the children to a park. They had a simple picnic with sandwiches and juice. Emma and Noah ran across the grass laughing and playing. Sarah watched with a smile on her face. Marcus sat beside her and took her hand. Sarah, I need to tell you something. Sarah looked at him, curious. When I met you that night, I didn't know what was going to happen. I only knew I needed to help. But now I can't imagine my life without you. Without the children. You've become my family. And I love you. Sarah felt the tears welling up. But this time, they were tears of happiness. I love you too, Marcus. You saved me, not just that night, but every day since then. You showed me what true love is. Love that doesn't give up. Love that cares. Love that reflects God. Marcus smiled and kissed her forehead. Then, marry me. Sarah's eyes widened. What? Marcus laughed nervously. I know it's early. I know we're still getting to know each other. But I'm sure, Sarah, I want to build a life with you. I want to be a father to your children. I want to grow old by your side. So, will you marry me? Sarah began to laugh and cry at the same time. She threw her arms around Marcus's neck and whispered, Yes, I accept. Emma and Noah saw them from afar and ran over, shouting with joy. They jumped on Sarah and Marcus, and the four of them stayed there in a group hug, laughing and crying together. 6 months later, Sarah and Marcus got married in a small, simple ceremony at the church they attended. Emma was the flower girl, and Noah was the page boy. There weren't many people. There wasn't much luxury. But there was love, there was faith, there was gratitude. And when the pastor asked Marcus if he promised to love and care for Sarah every day of his life, Marcus replied with tears in his eyes, I promise. God brought me to her for a reason, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring that purpose. When the pastor asked Sarah if she promised to love and care for Marcus every day of her life, Sarah replied with a radiant smile, I promise. He showed me God's love when I needed it most, and I will spend the rest of my life repaying that love. And there, before God and the people they loved, Sarah and Marcus became a family. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 years later, on an autumn afternoon, Sarah was at home when she received a call. It was from an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Sarah? Is that you? Sarah froze. That voice. She knew that voice. Derek? Yes, it's me. I know it's been a long time. And I know you don't want to talk to me. But I needed to call. I needed to ask for your forgiveness. Sarah sat down in the kitchen chair, her heart racing. Derek, what do you want? On the other end of the line, Derek sighed deeply. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I messed everything up. But, Sarah, I've changed. I went to rehab 2 years ago. I've been clean for 1.5 years. I found God, and I realized everything I did to you and the children, and I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. Sarah remained silent, processing. Sarah, I'm not asking you to come back to me. I know that ship has sailed. I just wanted you to know that I'm deeply sorry, and that if you ever manage to forgive me, I'll be grateful for it. Sarah took a deep breath. She had spent so much time angry at Derek, so much time blaming him for everything that had happened. But now, hearing his broken voice, full of genuine regret, she felt something different. She felt compassion. Derek, Sarah said, her voice calm, I'm not going to lie to you. What you did hurt me deeply. It almost destroyed me. But I've learned that holding a grudge only hurts me more. So, yes, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Derek started crying on the other end of the line. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. Sarah hung up the phone and sat there for a long time, thinking. Marcus arrived home shortly after and found her in the kitchen, lost in thought. Everything is fine, love. Sarah looked at him and smiled. That's fine. Just thinking about how unpredictable life is and how good God is. Marcus kissed her forehead. He really is. 5 years after that cold night in Detroit, Sarah and Marcus's lives had completely changed. They lived in a small but cozy house in the suburbs. Emma, now 12, was doing well in school and dreamed of becoming a doctor. Noah, 9, was passionate about sports and spent his weekends playing soccer with Marcus in the backyard. Sarah had gone back to school and graduated as a social worker. She worked for a non-profit organization that helped homeless families, just like she had been. She said it was her way of giving back everything she had received. Marcus continued working at the hospital, but now as a supervisor, and in their free time, he and Sarah served together at church, helping other people who were going through difficulties. But the most incredible story was yet to come. One Saturday morning, Sarah was working at the organization when a young woman entered cars carrying a small child. The woman had sunken eyes, dirty clothes, and that look that Sarah recognized immediately, the look of someone who had lost hope. Sarah stood up and went over to her with a kind smile. Hi, my name is Sarah. How can I help you? The woman hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I don't know if I've come to the right place. I heard that you help people who have nowhere to stay. Sarah nodded. Yes, we'll help. Come, sit here. Let's talk. The woman sat down, holding her son tightly. Sarah got a glass of water and offered it to her. The woman drank it all at once, and Sarah saw that she was hungry. Without saying anything, Sarah went to the kitchen and returned with a sandwich. The woman ate quickly and then began to cry. Sorry, it's just that I haven't eaten anything for 2 days. Sarah held her hand. You don't need to apologize. You're in a safe place now. Tell me what happened. And the woman told her story. She told her about her abusive husband, about losing her job, about how she ended up on the streets with her son. As she listened, Sarah felt as if she were looking at her own story from years ago. When the woman finished, Sarah took a deep breath and said, I know exactly how you feel, because I've been through it. The woman looked at Sarah, surprised. You? Sarah nodded. A few years ago, I was exactly where you are now. I was sleeping on the streets with my 2 children. I had lost everything, and I thought there was no way out. But then God put someone in my path, a man who helped me without expecting anything in return, and that changed my life. The woman began to cry harder. But I don't deserve help. I messed everything up. I made so many wrong choices. Sarah shook her head. Listen, It's not about deserving. It's about grace. And grace means that even when we don't deserve it, we receive help. So let me help you. We have partner shelters. We can get you a place to stay, food, clothes, and we're going to help you rebuild your life, step by step. The woman looked at Sarah with tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Sarah smiled, "Because someone did this for me, and because I believe that God puts us here to take care of each other. So let me take care of you." That day, Sarah helped that woman find shelter, food, and a new beginning. And as she watched her and her son leave the office with hope on their faces, Sarah felt a deep gratitude. Because she knew that, if it weren't for Marcus, she might still be on that cold sidewalk. Or worse, that night, at home, Sarah told Marcus about the woman. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, while Emma and Noah played in the yard. "You know, Marcus, when I look back, I still can't believe how everything has changed. There was one night I thought it was the end, that God had abandoned me, and then you appeared. And since then, everything has changed." Marcus took her hand and smiled. "God never abandoned you, my love. He was just preparing something bigger than you could imagine. And look, now you're doing the same thing for other people. You're being the answer to someone's prayers, just like I was the answer to yours." Sarah rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. "I love you so much. You know that, right?" Marcus kissed her head. "I know. And I love you too. More than I can express." They stood there in silence, simply enjoying each other's company. Emma and Noah ran up onto the balcony and joined their parents, and the four of them stayed there, a family built not on money or comfort, but on faith, love, and purpose. A few months later, Sarah and Marcus received an invitation to tell their story at church. At first, Sarah was nervous. She had never liked speaking in public. But Marcus encouraged her. "Love, your story can change someone's life. It can give hope to someone who is going through the same thing you went through. It's worth it." And then, one Sunday morning, Sarah went up onto the church stage. Her heart was pounding. But she took a deep breath and began. She spoke of the cold night, of the hunger, the fear, the despair, of the prayer that had been almost a farewell, and of Marcus, the man God had used as an instrument of miracle. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. People were openly crying. And after the service, several people approached Sarah, sharing their own stories of struggle and redemption. An elderly lady gripped Sarah's hands tightly and said, "Thank you for sharing this. I'm going through a difficult time and I was losing faith. But your story reminded me that God never gives up on us. He always has a plan." Sarah hugged the woman and whispered, "He really does. You can trust that." That night, back home, Sarah was lying in bed next to Marcus. She looked at him and smiled. "You know, I thought a lot about that night, about how I thought it was the end. And now I realize it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. God was closing one door to open another, a much bigger door." Marcus smiled. "And look where that door has brought you. A home, a family, a purpose. You're helping so many people, Sarah. You're making a difference in the world." Sarah sighed, happy. Marcus, we're making a difference because none of this would be possible without you." Marcus kissed her forehead. "We are a team, and we will continue to be, forever." And so, in that simple but loving home, Sarah and Marcus experienced proof that God is never late, that even in the darkest nights, the light always finds a way to shine, and that sometimes, all we need is someone willing to obey God's call. Because in the end, it wasn't money that saved Sarah. It wasn't luck. It was the faith of a simple man who said yes when God whispered in his heart. It was Sarah's courage to accept help when pride told her to refuse. It was love built on God's purposes and principles. And today, Sarah and Marcus continue serving together, helping families, restoring lives, and showing the world that miracles still happen. Not always the way we expect. Not always when we want them to, but always in God's perfect timing. And every time Sarah sees a family being restored, Every time she sees a desperate mother finding hope. Every time she sees a child smiling again, she remembers that cold night in Detroit. She remembers the moment she thought God had turned his face away, and she smiles, because now she knows the truth. God never turned his face away. He was simply preparing something much greater than she could imagine. He was preparing not only her salvation but the transformation of an entire life, and of all the lives she would touch afterward. Because that is the beauty of God's grace. It not only saves us, it transforms us, and it uses us to save others as well. And when Sarah lays her head on the pillow each night, next to the man God sent that cold night, she whispers a prayer of gratitude. Thank you, Lord, for not giving up on me, for sending Marcus, for transforming my darkest night into the beginning of my greatest blessing. And thank you for using me now to be a light in someone's darkness. May I never forget where I came from, and may I never stop extending a hand to those in need, just as a hand was extended to me. And God from heaven smiles, because that's exactly the story he loves to tell. The story of redemption, of love, of unwavering faith. The story that proves that no matter how deep we fall, he can always lift us up. And not only lift us up, but transform us into instruments of miracles for other people. This is the story of Sarah and Marcus. A love story born in the midst of a storm, a love built on God's purposes and principles. A love that proves that, even when all seems lost, God is never late. He always arrives on time, and he always keeps his promises. Sarah and Marcus proved that God never gives up. He transformed the darkest night into a dawn of hope, love, and purpose. They learned that faith is not the absence of fear. It's the courage to trust when all seems lost. And today, together, they show the world that miracles still happen. Not always in the way we expect, but always in God's perfect timing. Because he uses the most unlikely people, at the most unexpected moments, to transform entire lives. If this story touched you, leave a like, comment what you thought, and subscribe to continue hearing stories like this one I'm sharing with you. May God bless you,